Welcome to another Ref Show. One or two mistakes, but some good performances from referees over the weekend. Mark Halsey and Brian Deane are in the studio, plus one or two things we'd rather not be talking about that happened on a field of play, one in London, and also something that happened off the field that shouldn't happen, that I know that both these guys, as panellists, have got strong views about somebody who's another well-respected panellist and the way people are expected to behave. Before we start and do anything else, Brian, I read about you recently in connection with the team that I support, Chesterfield. I read that you're part of a takeover bid for the club.
Alan, you know, I cannot comment on speculation, my man.
That tells you everything.
I think that response tells you everything you need to know.
I cannot possibly comment.
So you're not denying it?
I can't comment, mate.
If it comes off, good luck.
You'll need it. But,
You'll need it.
Yeah, well, let's hope there is some movement in whatever direction there and let Chesterfield stay up. Right, that's the end of that commercial. Chesterfield fans, I think you've got everything you need to know there. Manchester United against Liverpool is always the big game of any weekend whenever it's held. And you were particularly focusing on Craig Pawson's performance in that. Liverpool, having lost 2-1, are obviously going to be critical, as they were.
Absolutely.
What did you think?
Yeah, I thought it was a pulsating game. I thought it was an excellent game, and I thought the players got to take credit for the way they conducted themselves on the field of play. Because yes, there were some physical challenges going on, but the referee had control of it. He would let them go. He was letting the game breathe. I thought he tempo managed the game very well as well. When the temperature went up, he sort of brought it back down again. There'll always be people always argue about one or two big key match decisions. Obviously, I thought it was pleasing to see Martin Atkinson, rein in Jurgen Klopp as well, because we've seen him many times this season running down that touchline, berating people, berating match officials, and get away with it. And if it had been Jose Mourinho, he'd have been put in the stand. But so I was pleased that Martin got the referee over to deal with him. But as I say, we was talking about it was a couple of key match incidents where for me, Jurgen Klopp wanted a penalty on Fellaini and Mane, and for me, I thought it was a coming together. It was one of those when I saw it in real time, it didn't even appeal to me.
What did you think?
And I just thought it was a coming together.
Yeah,
I agree with Mark. I've got to be honest with you, and I think that one of the key things here is that players are getting, they're getting better at kind of falling when there's minimum contact, and it's. I keep saying it's not making a referee's job. I'm actually coming a little bit more over the other way, to support referees.
I wish you were like that a few years ago.
No, I can't possibly comment on that.
You two had some conversations on the field of play.
Oh, we've had many.
Of course we did.
Of
course we did.
But the other thing then as well was, it was all taken. It was a bit of give and take as well. So, no, I think that the job is a lot harder now.
Now we've got VARs. We haven't got them, fortunately, at this moment. They're still being trialled. Had there been the VR system in operation, should they have come in on that incident?
Well, for me, no, because protocol clearly says a clear and obvious error. That is not a clear and obvious error. That's subjective. That's an opinion. Yeah. And I would side with Craig Pawson. I thought he got them. I thought he got all the big decisions spot on.
When there's a doubt about something, when it's subjective, back the referee. Is that what we're saying here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're becoming too mechanical.
Yeah.
I think
you don't like it either.
No, I don't. I hate it. I've got to be honest. I think that referees are there. This is affecting the flow of football games now.
Yeah.
And you've got to allow referees to live and die, be judged by their mistakes. If you take any of the that side of it, that element out of it, then it's a different game altogether. Talking
about the flow of football games, obviously the West Ham Burnley game was disrupted by a couple of mini pitch invasions there. Burnley winning 3-0 to inflame the situation as well. Although, some of these scenes were quite ugly. The Hammer skipper Mark Noble bundled over one of the invaders. You got sympathy with these actions there?
It's a good job Brian went on the pitch.
It is. Well, he's a former West Ham player.
Well, the fan wouldn't have got back up, that's for sure.
Again. I kind of, what fans don't realise is when this kind of thing happens, it does affect the players. You know, it affects their performance. You know, because they automatically think that it's aimed towards them. No matter what, how you want to put it, you know, players are affected.
And they're human beings,
Yeah.
and you can entirely understand the way Mark Noble reacted there, can't you?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us thought, well, any pitch invader deserves a damn good hiding anyway. Really.
Yeah, as a referee, you just sometimes turn the blind eye, you turn the other way. But
Had you seen it though, I mean, you could turn a blind eye as common sense,
Yeah.
but technically you could send a player off for that.
Well, no, because it's not violent.
You wouldn't
It's
want
not committing
to,
an act of violent conduct. Well, I mean, Lee Mason. Let's give some praise to Lee Mason because he handled the situation very well. Now you can say Mark Noble was protecting himself, but you know, if we look at the first half, if West Ham, because West Ham played really well, if they'd have taken their chances, Burnley would have been dead and buried. And so
absolutely.
you know, like Brian says, it upsets the players, doesn't it? And then the players, you know, they want to win for the fans, so they just got to be careful what they're doing, and obviously the FA will come down very, very hard on West Ham.
Scenes you just don't want to see. I mean, you can understand protest, but not when it comes to invading the pitch and coin throwing.
And obviously as well, there's a health and safety issue there as well.
Yes, yeah, there is. I mean, the players need protection.
But it'd be interesting whether it's the who own the stewards. Is it West Ham or is it the stadium?
I read it was the stadium, and
Right,
they
okay.
took responsibility for the stewarding and security, which appears to have been inadequate.
But it still come under West Ham's jurisdiction, wouldn't it? You know?
I don't suppose any of you saw that steward sleeping, did you? While the game was going.
Was there one still sleeping?
Is that where they got on?
Yeah.
It was on. You know, they sit on the little sort of like stool things, and he was snoring away like.
Right. Well, great result for Burnley. I mean, a couple of things. 0-0. West Ham reckon they might have had a penalty for handball. You're not.
Yeah,
convinced,
I think you could argue because his arm's gone up and it's gone out, so it's in a unnatural position. So you could say that West Ham should have had a penalty, but then at the same time, Burnley had a goal ruled out for offside, and it shouldn't have been offside. It was level. So
no complaints really for West Ham of the way that scoreline evolved there. Bournemouth and Spurs. Bournemouth 1, Spurs 4. Mike Deane was in charge of that. It was very interesting the way Spurs got their third goal.
Yeah, it was because obviously Bournemouth were awarded a free kick in the middle of the Spurs half. Obviously 2-1 chasing an equaliser. Yeah. And all the Bournemouth players are in the penalty box, okay? Yes. So they're trying to take a quick free kick. I don't know if you saw it, but Son's standing on the ball, not letting them take the quick free kick. So the referee really has got to usually get them back to 10 yards. But because he couldn't take the free kick, he knocked it sideways, and his teammate lost the ball, and then Son got the ball and he was away. So there was no players back because the referee really didn't do his job properly in getting the ball back 10 yards. So it's something really that for referees, and it's happened a few times this season. So really, Spurs shouldn't have got that third goal, because if he'd have got him back 10 yards, he would have put the ball in the box. And you've got someone like Dino in the box who can get in there quickly with his head, and you never know, it could have been 2-2.
Do you think Son had anything like that in his head when the
of course he do. Of course. It's
played out for him.
It's to delay the restart, and so he doesn't get that ball into the box.
Bournemouth thought they'd levelled it at 2-2, but there was a disallowed goal for a push on Sanchez. Do you think that was a correct decision?
Yeah, it was a correct decision. You can see clearly 2 hands pushed him out of the way. So you've got to give those, especially when it goes in.
Yeah. Got loads of championship action to come, by the way, to discuss, including that East Midlands derby, which is always quite feisty. I know that you had your eyes on that. It was 0-0 in terms of the score between Forest and Derby. It wasn't 0-0 on the disciplinary front, was it? There was plenty going off on that. A couple of other games from the Premier League on the Saturday. Roger East game, Everton 2, Brighton 0. I mean, you see some challenges that make you wince. Where on the scale was Anthony Knockhart's challenge? And he got red carded there, Brian.
I mean, come on, his head's gone on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it had gone the previous week against Arsenal, didn't it? Do you remember we had that injury to the Brighton player, head injury?
There was, yeah.
He come and started pushing the Arsenal player, so he lost, and he took him off after that because he'd lost his head, and again.
It's a bit fiery, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's I mean, that could have happened.
Player.
Yeah, he's a very good
Frenchman, Gallic, temperament.
But for me, a fellow professional doing that to a professional, another player. And luckily for Baines, saw it coming and took his leg out of the way.
He ended up, Blake Baines ended up standing up.
For me, that's
surviving it. For me,
that's
evasive.
Yeah, but he stood up. He could have actually, that could have been a clear fracture.
Well, for me, that's where it deserves more than 3 games.
Yeah. Well, there was another one that was sort of might have had a grey area involved in it. I don't think you agree. And that was in Michael Oliver's game, the Huddersfield-Swansea battle at the bottom of the Premier League, which finished 0-0. The early dismissal there of Jordan Ayew of Swansea, 11 minutes, very clearly studs up on Jonathan Hogg. No argument?
I like the way Michael Oliver took his time, because obviously he was replaying it through his head, because they've both gone in for a 50-50 challenge, and I think the way Ayew's gone sliding in and Hogg's come the other way, Hogg's caught him, but he wasn't high. And if you look at Ayew's follow through, his boots high and caught him right round the knee, and that could have ended his career, couldn't it?
That could have been a 12-month job.
Absolutely.
Carlos Carvalho felt that the challenge, the 50-50, and that the other challenge from Jonathan Hogg wasn't dissimilar to the.
Can I just say? I mean, we get this every week. Managers defending their players with these challenges either side. Why isn't anybody just coming out and being honest and saying, look, it's a bad challenge? Nothing. It's not going to change anything.
No. I think what they do, they deflect it off their players onto the referee, aren't they? That's what they're doing. And
again, I don't think anybody benefits from that.
No, agree with you, Brian.
Just breeze through one or two others that didn't have as much incident. Andre Mariner was in charge of Newcastle 3, Southampton 0. Newcastle really getting it together there and playing some good stuff.
I think he's doing an excellent job of what he's got.
Yeah. And Bobby Madley had West Brom 1, Leicester 4. Another defeat for Alan Pardew, but he seems to survive every single one of them.
Yeah. That's a difficult job. I mean, he walked into a quite a toxic situation, to be fair. I mean, I've worked under him. I think that his training methods are good. I know the kind of football he wants to play. He's had, unfortunately, Dean Sturridge has got injured as soon as he's gone in there, so he's not had a chance to get up and running. It's just been a car crash, really.
Yeah. From start to finish. Anthony Taylor had Chelsea's 2-1 victory over Crystal Palace. Any observations on that or anything?
Yeah, I thought Palace were a bit unlucky because they had a goal ruled out. I'm not sure in the second half, and I think it would have made a big difference. And for life of me, I don't understand why it was ruled out. It was a perfectly good goal. I think he's given a free kick to Chelsea for a dangerous play, but I couldn't see any dangerous play whatsoever. Yeah.
And before we move on to the Championship, the ever-reliable Martin Atkinson was in charge of Arsenal's 3-0 win over Watford. What a turnaround again for Arsene Wenger. Is it a just temporary turnaround, or are we talking about something more permanent?
If I can just say, I've always been a Wenger fan, but I think now, look, for his own legacy, he should have already gone for me, because there's no turning right now. Even if they win all the games till the end of the season, the fans are still going to want him out. They basically want change, and it's sad to see, really, because he's been so iconic in the game.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
But you'd rather him go when his team's winning than have to be seen to be hounded out by several defeats.
Well, look at Sir Alex Ferguson. He knew when to go, didn't he? He did.
I think he was very shrewd, actually, getting in there.
But to be fair to Arsene, he's done a fantastic job. He's done the move. They've paid off the stadium, so he's done tremendously well for Arsenal.
Behind the scenes, he's been fantastic. Yeah. He would have been given said, listen, we need to qualify for the Champions League every year, and he's done that. You can't compete with Chelsea when they were spending what they were spending, Manchester United, but he's kept them consistently in the top 4.
And played great football as well. Moving on to your club, new club. You didn't see that, did you? Chesterfield. Okay, incidents at Chesterfield, which, to quote the cliche, puts game of football into perspective. Something that I've not seen on a football field. The air ambulance was called, landed on the pitch during the game. The referee suspended play for half an hour so that a fan who'd been taken seriously ill could be airlifted to hospital. And the last word was the fan was making a good recovery, it would seem. So we're pleased about that. That was David Webb was in charge of that. I bet he didn't expect that when he turned up for work.
No, it's difficult. Obviously, players, spectators, everybody's safety is paramount. So if that's what you've got to do, that's what you've got to do. But it must be difficult for the players, waiting around for half an hour before they go back on again. So obviously they must have been gone back into the dressing room, sitting around. It must, your legs stiffen up, and you need another. It must be hard because then they have to do another warm up before they start again, because they don't want to pull any muscle. So
it's an interesting one for a referee, but it would appear to have been well handled. The outcome was happy. In terms of the spectator, the scoreline wasn't for Chesterfield, sadly, a 3-1 defeat, which leaves them in perilous trouble, doesn't it?
Yeah, struggling. If you look at the division, it's starting to kind of get cut adrift. That's going to affect confidence as well in the players. But you've got to keep going. You know.
Well, let's look at the Championship. In fact, just before we do that, sadly, an incident coming to our attention. It's in all the papers and all the media outlets over the weekend. You can't really avoid it, and that is top pundit Jamie Carragher, well respected, and who's always entertaining with his views, being caught spitting from his car through his car window at a supporter on the road going away from a game at the weekend. Pretty unsavoury to wake up to those sort of images, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing worse than someone spitting it. I've got to say, I'm very, very surprised at Jamie doing that, I have to say. What can you say? What can you say? I mean, he's apologised, but you've got to be bigger than that, haven't you? You've got, we've all suffered abuse, haven't we? You've suffered abuse. Us referees suffer really worse abuse than that he's got there, and just got to.
That's nothing. That's nothing. He's got. He doesn't even play for the club anymore, so he's gone there as a pundit. It might be a supporter, but you can't react like that. I'm sorry, and I'm sure that I've heard Jamie Carragher talk about spitting on the pitch when he's been a pundit. So it's time to man up for me.
Well, you two have both had provocation.
You've got to be bigger. You've got to be bigger than that, and you just got to.
What would you do?
Bigger than that. I would just smile at them, and I wouldn't. You just smile. You could give them a smile when you drive on. You just smile.
How can he let that affect him when he's well employed? He's got a great job. You have to be impartial more so now if you're a pundit like him. So how can he? I mean, he's no better than any hooligan out there that has been criticised. Really, he's done exactly the same thing as one of them.
He's profusely apologised.
Yeah, he'd be sitting there this morning thinking, "What on earth have I done? What have I done?" And listen, he can't do no more than apologise. And
he'd be thinking about his Sky contract. That's for sure. It just depends on what they're going to think of that.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty clear what you two think about that. East Midlands derby, Nottingham Forest 0, Derby 0, but there were 6 yellows and another 2 yellows, which saw Tom Huddleston of Derby sent off in that game. You watched it?
Yeah, well, I was flicking through, watching all the games. So, there were some challenges going on in that game, and sometimes, he was letting some go where he didn't caution players, perhaps where he should have done, stamped his authority in the game, and then of course it escalates then, and players think, oh hang on, he's let that go, I'll be able to get away with one myself, and that's what happens. So when you get that first opportunity in those sort of games, you've got to stamp your authority on your game, just like Craig did on Saturday in the Man Utd Liverpool game, because they are the hardest. They were, for me, was one of the hardest games to referee. And going to Forest Derby, that's a massive derby, local derby. So it's so important that you stamp your authority on the game. You get that first challenge. Yeah, you have to set your tolerance levels high, but I think on this game, I think he set it a little bit too high.
Most remarkable game of the weekend, a game of 4 penalties. That was Hull 4, Norwich 3, with Tim Robinson in charge of that. What did you make of that?
Well, I've got to say, I was watching the game on the highlights on the Championship, and you're going through the penalties. You can see, he's given that one. You can, some would argue yes, some would argue no. So if he gives it, it's a penalty. If he doesn't give it, you would agree with it. But the last one, I mean, I watched it and I thought, what's going on there? So I stopped it and rewound it, and so, I mean, 5 or 6 times I still couldn't see a foul. So, don't know what you're saying. I still don't know.
Well, I think most of the fans enjoyed it. Certainly, the Hull fans enjoyed it.
Well, as a referee, don't go looking for trouble.
Right, Tim Robinson's been involved in 1 or 2 things on that ground. I remember that notorious one involving Fernando Forestieri. Do you remember? And Michael Dawson a couple of seasons back. Tim Robinson was the referee there, where he sent him off, didn't he, for a second yellow when
it was a clear foul.
Yeah, when he'd been fouled. Yeah. I saw a very good refereeing performance in what, for a goalless draw, it wasn't a bad game either. Burton and Bristol City. That was Oliver Langford at the weekend. Well refereed, I thought. Well, nobody takes any notice of what I think of these things. And Neil Warnock wasn't happy, even though he won. Cardiff have won again. 6 successive wins, 3-2 against Birmingham. Birmingham had a comeback there on the back of a penalty that Neil said it was for nothing. You wouldn't have anything happen to you if you did something like that in a shopping centre, he said. I don't know, what's he talking about?
Listen, why is he moaning? He's second in the league. It could be going up, automatically.
Yeah, Peter Banks was in charge of that. He's one of the better referees.
Neil's
got his win again. Thanks, lads. I think that's near enough everything for this week. Been very entertaining. I've enjoyed it anyway. I hope you enjoy it there. And thanks to Brian, thanks to Mark, and see you for another Ref Show next week. See you then. Bye.